Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Take Five, and we are now in Exodus 21. Now we've had the Ten Commandments, okay, and those are definitely the most important. But we've got some other laws here that God gave His people, and we're going to look at them. So Exodus 21, verse 1. These are the laws you are to set before them, okay? Because now the Ten Commandments don't get into all the specifics. So here we go, verse 2. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the seventh year he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be a servant for life. All right, now back then you did have slavery, okay? And slavery has been around for thousands and thousands of years. But when you think of slavery, you think of the abuses of slavery that happened here in this country, probably. And slavery, it wasn't like that always, and it hasn't been like that every place. Um, Slavery, while even the word itself sounds terrible, um, is not necessarily terrible if it's the abuses of slavery that make it terrible. Let me give you an example. We are called to be slaves of God. And the idea behind slavery, look, if you can't afford to make it on your own, what you basically do is you're hoping somebody else can support you, and in exchange for that you work for them. All right, but they provide you food and clothing and shelter, and usually the food is good because they want you strong so you can do more work. All right. But when you think slavery, you think of the whips and things like that, and that wasn't always the case. And so we're just going to go ahead and talk about the fact now that slavery is real in this passage that we're reading. Okay, and throughout the Bible, slavery is real. So he's saying, look, if you got a slave, he can only serve you for 6 years. You got to let him go the seventh year. All right. If he's got family, you got to let him go together. Now, if you gave him family while he was serving you, and see, some of these slave owners were very generous, and they'd give them wives and let them have wives and kids. Okay, you can keep the wife and kid, but you got to let him go. But if he loves his family, you got to let him stay. And then it talks about piercing his ear, and a lot of people today have the pierced ears. Well, back then that was, you did that to show that he was yours, and he had voluntarily decided to stay as a slave because he loves his family. See, God didn't want to break up families. God never wanted to break up families. God always wants to keep families together if possible. All right, verse 7. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do, if she does not please the master who has selected her for himself. He must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, and marital rights. If he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. All right. Again, this is God looking after women, because it says if a man sells his daughter as a servant, okay, this is a situation where a man's so poor he can't take care of his own daughter, so he sells her so somebody else can take care of her. But this person that bought his daughter. Now, I know that sounds awful, but it's a different time, different culture. This person that bought his daughter says, oh, and it also says that he can't sell her to foreigners. Okay, got to sell her to people within the Hebrew community. But when he sells her, the guy has to wait till somebody else buys her. He can't just release her, and that's because women would have had a very hard time making it on their own without there. Out there. He said, but if he picks her for his son has to treat her really good, just like he would treat one of his daughters. Okay, son has to treat her like a normal wife, even if he finds somebody else. And he says these three things: food, clothing, and marital rights. And marital rights there is referring to sex. Okay, saying you got to take care of your women, and you know what? Basic needs. Okay, when you want to talk about a basic need that you're going to have, I know you don't like talking about it. All right. But a man if you're going to be with a man, okay, he better feed you and clothe you and give you good loving. All right. And if that man's not willing to do that, you need to find a different man. All right. You're not a slave now. You don't have to stick with somebody. And even in this case, even though this woman was a slave, says if this guy's not taking care of that, he's got to let her go. So, I mean, being a slave back then wasn't so bad. You know what? You see what I mean? I mean, he's got to take care of her, even though she's a slave. He's got to treat her like his daughter, and his son has to treat her like his wife. And I think we're about at the 5-minute mark. But interesting stuff. Lots more of these. We've got to go. Interesting to look at the Old Testament law and compare them to the laws we have now. But we'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Take 5.